Hello there, it's MusicMan0150, also known as Gary, and yes, I'm back again with another video. And what I'm going to show you today is the upgrade of some more computers. Right now you're looking at a gateway that is being started, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put, or at least try to attempt to do, is put Windows 2000 on it. It had Windows XP on it before, but I thought that was a little bit slow, so I'm going to go ahead and put Windows 2000 on it. And what you're seeing now is the setup process. Now the lines in the video, that's from the camera itself. That's not the screen, because through the naked eye the screen is pure. It's not flashing like it is in the video here. But this particular gateway, as I said, is going to be upgraded or downgraded, not upgraded, but downgraded to Windows 2000, being that it only has 512 megs of RAM, and it's only a 450 megahertz processor, but it is a Pentium 2, and a Pentium 2 is actually faster at 450 megahertz than a Pentium 3 at 450 megahertz. So those of you that have older computers, always check the processor speed and also check the RAM. Those are the two things to check to determine just how fast your machine can run and how much it can be upgraded to. Now this particular gateway, it can go to 768 megs of RAM, because I don't know if you could see in here because it's kind of dark, but you could see in there's two memory chips in there now, and there's room for a third one, and I'm actually going to try and reinsert the third chip after the setup is complete. In fact, this is the chip right here. This is actually what a memory chip looks like for a typical computer. Now there's various chips. Some of them have two of these slots on it, and some only have one slot. So you have to make sure you have the right chip before trying to insert it into the memory slot on the computer, because if you try forcing it in and it doesn't go in unless with great force, then you can break everything, including the chip and the slot, and possibly even damage the motherboard. In fact, if you break the memory slot, then of course the motherboard is done for anyway, because without the memory the computer won't work. And another factor, you can see right here, this is a hard drive, a typical hard drive, and without this the computer won't work either. Actually it'll start to boot, but then as far as running any kind of programs or operating systems, that's not going to work, because there's no permanent storage components inside the casing. So you have to have a hard drive in order to store everything and be able to run everything that you want to run. Now this particular gateway has a DVD drive, 3.5-inch floppy, and a CDRW drive. And I think the DVD drive on this is not working the way it should, because I have this 2000 window disk, and for some reason it's not running the way it should in the drive, and I'm thinking this particular DVD drive isn't functioning the way it should. And the reason I say that is because the reaction time or response time, like when I press a key where it says press any key to boot from CD, well, it was very, very slow. And the light on this particular drive is just staying on. It's not flashing. So I'm thinking that there's something wrong with this drive. And I had not checked the CDRW drive, so I'm not sure if that one is working good either. But I do have other CD drives that I can insert. This is actually a typical CD-ROM drive. Now this is just a reader for CDs. And I think this one isn't working well either. So actually what I'm doing is going through all the different components that I have and getting rid of all the bad stuff. I'm putting all that in recycle. Because what's happening is I go to pull a component that I want to use to upgrade a system and find out that it isn't working. And that just lags more time in getting the computer either upgraded or repaired for proper workmanship. So that's why I'm going through all these components. So, as you can see, there's still a big delay on this. So I'm thinking it's that drive. So we're just gonna shut this computer down. And the way to do it is you just hold the button, the power button, and apparently it didn't shut down. So what I'm going to do, next best thing, is just unplug it. If all else fails, you unplug it. And then that puts no power to it at all. So that's the gateway. I'm also working on a Dell Optiplex GX1. And if you saw back here, this button that I pushed way back here, this is on what is known as a KVM switch. And what a KVM switch allows you to do, it allows you to switch between or among several computers. Now, the computer screen you're looking at now is coming from this Dell 1000R computer. And this one has Windows 2000 on it. Now we're going to push the button twice on the switcher because there's nothing on the next setting, but on the setting after that we have the image for the Dell Optiplex GX1. And the Dell Optiplex GX1 is down here. See, I have it down here in the workbench, and it fits really nice because it's a flat top or a desktop type. It's not a tower. And so at one point I had very old vintage computers just stored under here, and I thought, you know what, that's just taking up a lot of space, useless space, where I didn't have a functional computer to be able to operate and work with. So now I have this Dell Optiplex GX1, and this is actually a computer that I'm going to upgrade the BIOS on. And what the BIOS is, it's a piece of software stored on a chip inside the computer that's mounted on the motherboard. And the motherboard is the huge board in a computer, and everything else gets hooked to that. Just to kind of give you an idea on what the motherboard looks like on a typical machine, you can see it on this one. See the big board laying flat there? That's the motherboard. And then all your expansion cards, your processor, your memory chips, all your power connections, that gets all connected to that. So that's the main board. So anyway, getting back to the BIOS, what the BIOS is, as I said, it's a very small piece of software on a chip that identifies what components you have attached to the computer. And I just downloaded the latest BIOS update for the Dell Optiplex GX1. Now, a warning to all of you that do this. When you flash the BIOS, do not, under no circumstances, do not turn off your computer or unplug it or do anything that will make it lose power. Because if you do, during the BIOS upgrade, that computer will be out of commission. And I do not know what the cost is to get that chip replaced. And if it's an old machine, you may be out of luck in getting a replacement chip for that particular model. So under no circumstances do you ever turn off the computer or unplug it when you flash the BIOS. If it takes a while to do, you leave it go. Just leave it go. And the other thing is, make sure that if you're using floppy disks, make sure that they are good working floppy disks so that there's no errors in loading the update. And also, if you're using CDs, make sure that there's no errors on the CD either. And same with if you're flashing the BIOS through a Windows setup. Make sure that there's no viruses, no spyware, no malware, no infections on the machine at all. Because any failure of a BIOS upgrade, well, you can revert it, but the problem is, if the machine doesn't boot up after a failure BIOS flash, then 9 times out of 10 usually the machine is dysfunctional, and then it's only good for parts. So that's a little advice. And so what I'm going to do is, I've already taken steps to make sure that this floppy disk here is formatted properly. There's no errors on it. And now what I'm going to do is insert that into the floppy drive. And I'm going to, if I can find my arrow here, we're going to restart this Dell Optiplex. The mouse is being a little difficult here. Oh, I see why. I got a mouse pad over here and it's going off the mouse pad. There we go. Now let's see where we are. Okay. Just hang on a second while I get this lined up here. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to hit start, shut down, and it's already set to restart, so we're going to restart it. And the floppy disk is in there. Now the BIOS that's in there now is A08. A08. That's a special number for Dell computers. They have versions of that sort. And so we're going to see here what happens when we flash it. They always say that you should upgrade the BIOS whenever you can, because it allows the computer to have more stability. It'll stable it better. Okay, now let's see what it says here. I'm going to read it with the naked eye. It says, press any key to continue. The whole message says, verifying system configuration, checking ROM file. ROM file is CRC-32. ROM file CRC32 is correct. Press any key to continue. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, now it says, about to replace Dell System Optiplex GX1 500BR plus BIOS. Press Y to replace A08 BIOS with A10 BIOS. Okay, so it's going to be upgraded. See, it says A08 with A10. So, now this is where you cannot shut the machine off. So I'm going to hit the Y. And now you could see it. Erasing flash, programming flash, comparing flash, and it's all 100%. Now it says done. Press any key to reboot. So now we'll take out the disk, and let's hit F2 for setup. Entering setup. And you can see the white bar was going across. And now you can see it says A10. Before it was A08, and now it's A10. And it's pretty much the same, but it's a higher upgrade, which will allow the machine to run a little bit better. So now I'm going to hit escape, and now you can see it's doing some counting methods. 3COM. These are just some codes that it's doing. So the thing you don't want to do is you just let it do its thing at this point. So now it's reloading Windows. Windows 2000 Professional. And once Windows loads, then we should have a normal running system again. Now, the first time that it does this, it is going to act a little bit slow. And that's why you can't be impatient when you do flash a BIOS. You have to just be very patient and let the computer do its thing, its upgrade. Otherwise, you can run into very, very severe problems. So it looks like everything is going to be running normal. We'll know for sure once we hear the sound. Just to kind of give you an idea of what it says on the screen. Preparing network connection. Yep, it's running okay. And there we go. Now the computer is upgraded. The BIOS is upgraded. So there's a little lesson for you on BIOS upgrades and computer upgrades. So that's going to conclude this video for right now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the camera down, and I'm actually going to swap drives out of this computer and put in just a plain CD-ROM drive. And then I'll come back and we'll try rebooting this system again and see what happens.